I never, ever, ever inquired about the other programs when I was there, to be honest. I mean, I was pretty preoccupied with what I had to do, and I had certainly enough intrigue in my close proximity that I didn't need to start asking about what was going on the other side of the continent. It is so sparsely populated. I mean, it's got to be the most sparsely populated geography on the planet by area. I've said before to folks that it was an old sailing term. They would say, if you go below 60 degrees south, there's no law. If you go below 7 degrees south, there's no hope. And if you go below 80 degrees south, there's no God. Basically, I lived at 90 degrees south for a year, and we used to joke around and say, it's not quite hell, but you can see it from here. The biggest mountain that I saw from the deck, from the ground, was Erebus when I was at McMurdo. But when we flew to Pole, I was very lucky to get, I got to jump into the cockpit for the departure and most of the flight. So I had wonderful views of the Trans-Antarctic Mountains and such. So I saw tons of mountains in the flight. A way that a lot of folks look at Antarctica. I mean, I get the perspective of the view that they're seeing. But it's an aerial view from very high up, and they're looking at the surface of Antarctica, which for the most part is ice, and say 2 miles over the ground, the surface of the ice. So it is in motion. It reserves the right to move and change, and you can have a hole that's in the ice, right? It would first have to go down 2 miles before you get to the dirt. And then if there's a cave that happens to go to a tunnel into the below geography, well, then we're getting into what is considered, the secret underground stuff in Antarctica. But that's what we mean by underground. Like there's 2 miles of ice. People forget that. So seeing holes in it and anomalies, I mean, the surface of the ice gets really peculiar and changes all over the place. I very rarely see a picture of stuff when people go, oh, what is this on the surface of Antarctica? It looks like, and it's like, well, you could say it's going to look like that, or it could, if you change the camera angle, it'll look like something else as well. And 6 months from now, it's going to look like something completely different when the ice makes it look weird some different way. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to be a discounter. I absolutely believe in all possibility and all strangeness. I'm just saying I haven't seen it. Of course. Yeah.
No, of course, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I'm investigating because I believe there is stuff going on. I haven't seen a picture where I'm like, oh, that's such and such, and that totally means it's a UFO. Like I have seen pictures. I have seen pictures where, I mean, it's obviously man-made structures, right? There's obviously a man-made structure, and they're like, oh my God, what is that? It's unnatural. Yeah, no problem. It's unnatural. It's probably an automatic weather station. And you can look it up, and you can find it on the map. I mean, the map that we just had up top showed you that the continent is peppered with all kinds of structures. If you zoom in on any one of those things, you're going to see something unnatural on the landscape. Different holes that go all the way down 2 miles to the ground. So there's this array in the ice that the lab sits in the middle of, and they're all wired back to the lab. So there's these strings that go down from the surface all the way down, and they have DOMs on them, digital optical monitors. And there's what it says 5,160 digital optical modules suspended along 86 strings embedded in a cubic kilometer of ice beneath the South Pole. It detects neutrinos through the tiny flashes of blue light called Chernikov light, produced when neutrinos interact with the ice. Basically, it makes a blue light. When a neutrino comes into contact with the nucleus of an atom in the ice, it turns into a muon and then makes a blue flash. And the DOMs are detecting the blue flash, and in the array, when all the DOMs can, identify which direction the flash came from, it allows them to orient and make a trajectory so that they can know where things came from. And then the idea is that they then communicate that information. So they say, hey, a neutrino came firing in from, coordinate X out in the cosmos. So everybody turn your telescopes and look over at coordinate X and see if we can figure out what the source of the neutrino was. And that's effectively what they're saying is the science. Neutrino detecting. One of the things that I've learned from functioning in government programs, I was in the submarine service for a bit in 1994, and the idea I noticed there, I've worked as a tradesman in all kinds of peculiar facilities, i.e. South Pole Station now added to the list, and a bunch of places. And what I've learned is that when the government invests in stuff, they always have what they're selling it to you as. Like, oh, we're going to invest because this is what it does. In my experience, it always does at least something else. They always get a double return on their investment at least. So I look for these things, and I pay attention to things everywhere I go, and I inquire, and I have the benefit of running around in many different compartments. And I've always found that most folks that stay in a compartment become a specialist. So I always keep my eyes peeled when I go places, because oftentimes it's really obvious that this stuff has the potential to be doing something else. And if you start asking people, they just get into full-blown denial. Oh, it couldn't do that, or it wouldn't do that, or even if it could do that, why would we do that with it? We have no reason to do that with it, And I've been in these conversations before. There's 5,160 of these DOMs. Each one has its own name and identifier, which I also find interesting. They do name them all. So there's like an R2-D2, a Chewbacca. Like everybody got to throw names on a DOM. There's all kinds of different DOM names. Some of them are funny. This whole system is integrated into the ice. 5,160 of these DOMs are submerged and embedded in the ice. I have a lot of what ifs on what this facility could be, because to me, and again, I look at this one too because I was there, so I got to see the equipment when it was being assembled, and I'm aware that a passive device doesn't really need such gauge cabling. So it seemed odd to me. It looked like a lot of power was required for this facility, and to me, passive and power don't normally go together. So I always found that odd when I was there. But yeah, there was tons and tons of large gauge stuff going down into these holes. And I was like, wow, that's wild. I think that's Tesla volts. They're very high energy. I believe it's 100 Tesla, which is a neutrino is a very high energy impact. It is low. Okay, I'm going to use the terms that they told me when I was there. I know the science has gone further since, but when I was there, they were telling me that it is a low to no mass particle moving close to, at, or beyond the speed of light. That's what they were working on at the time. Since then, they pretty much know that it is low mass. They do not believe that it is no mass. And there's, if I remember correctly, they found them going faster than the speed of light since I was there. There's a lot of things that can go faster than the speed of light. A lot of people just don't know this. I learned this through my own research before I got to the South Pole, and then I got to discuss it with some of the greatest physicists in the world, and they agree with me. So the fact of the matter is you can actually look up the stuff from, I actually found a video from the Neutrino detector where one of the scientists from the program straight up on video is saying, yeah, the stuff they teach kids in school about physics is wrong, but what are we going to do? Like, well, they already know everything's wrong. The standard model of physics is wrong. Everyone knows it. We're just in the process of figuring out the errors. The speed of light at 186,000 miles per second is a current standard. We get to observe it at that rate. In reality, that rate changes. And there are things that keep it at this rate, and there are things that'll make it go to another rate. If you ask a qualified physicist, what would happen if the speed of light what would change if the speed of light were to change? The answer is everything. because it can happen. The speed of light can change. We just don't know why it's where it's at right now.
Okay. Yeah,
it's been different in the past, and they know that.
Yes.
Don't like talking about it because they don't understand the parameters for which maintain it at the speed that it's at. So they just don't talk about it. There's tons of stuff they don't talk about. The stuff that basically undermines all the positions that they have right now in science, which is easily underminable because almost everything is first and foremost based on the consistent speed of light. The surgeon was in the CIA. He was a CIA surgeon. The Glomar Explorer was the Howard Hughes boat that was a cover story for research, but instead it had a big claw that opened up under the hull and was snatching sunken Russian submarines off the bottom of the ocean. Our surgeon was the surgeon for that boat.
Wow.
He had amazing stories. Yeah, he's been a CIA pilot / surgeon since like the 50s. Yeah, he was an old timer. He was the oldest person to ever winter at Pole, and he didn't give a darn anymore. He'd be sitting in the galley telling stories about, being in Laos and Cambodia, and I'd be like, Doc, we weren't ever supposed to be in those countries. He's like, I don't care. What are they going to do? Kill me?
Hey.
I don't doubt anything. Once you deal with Raytheon, I mean, it's as far as corporations go, I consider them the devil incarnate. Absolutely, I have no love lost on Raytheon. They're one of the most sinister companies I've ever had to deal with. Our cooks were fantastic. I felt really happy that they were able to take food out of an ice tunnel that had the stuff stored at minus 60 degrees and they could turn it into good food. It was an amazing miracle of culinary skill. But on the sunrise dinner, since we had been there for so long, most of us, they had put out an inquiry to the community. Hey, what would you like to have for dinner? Give us your ideas and put them in a box and we'll see what we think, right? So everybody wrote down what they wanted. And it turned out, instead of them choosing the best thing, they just wound up making every single thing that everybody dreamed up. So people wrote down whatever cockamamie thing they could think of. Like, I had a friend of mine, he wrote, he's like, I just want a big, huge, giant plate of, chili cheese fries. So, he put that in, and that's what he got. I think I put in, I wanted bacon-wrapped filet mignon and coconut shrimp with garlic mashed potatoes, I think is what I had. I know that I've been saying to this point that the IceCube Neutrino detector is a passive detecting device because that's what I was trained and that's what I was taught. But because I am somebody who digs into other possibilities and equations, and that other departments sometimes like to Shanghai equipment and use it for other things, I was provided this document by someone in a program who informed me that this device is also used for other things. And this is the proof that they gave me, which shows that the DOM actually has a high voltage output as well. At 2,047 volts per DOM over the 5,000 some odd DOMs in that ice, there's certainly something else available for activity at that position. And that's what I'm letting everybody know, is that something else is going on. In other videos that I have been in before, over a year ago, I had divulged to the world that the ELF, the extra low frequency system at the South Pole Station, that we were told is off, is on. It's on. It's not off. It's on. I know that. I witnessed that myself. So the ELF system is on, and the IceCube Neutrino detector does more than just passively listen and has the ability to power up and transmit outwardly. It does something actively. All possibility exists always. Now we go from the direction of it's not just a listening device. It actively does something. So now we need to research that as a community, knowing a new truth. This is not a stationary listening device. What does this component now interact with? Like, I know the ELF is a component, right? I know the ELF could be a communications device, but I also know that ELF could be a component to a larger mechanism, depending on which department wants to integrate their component with this component for what they want to produce. Right? Like, I'm sitting here in a studio with simple studio equipment, and I know that if I take one component and I connect it to this one, it does this, but if I take it and mix it this way, it does that. So now we just have to look at what these components can do and what they're integrating them with. because that's the direction that we're going to find the real truth at, is what's really going on. I mean, for starters, it's not just listening. Why there? Why would you be at the bottom of the earth transmitting? You know, it is a peculiar spot. I do know that when we move throughout the cosmos, whenever we approach another planet or moon, globe, whatever you want to call it, sphere, because of what we know of our piss poor knowledge of gravity and how to calculate it, the best way to go around the variable of having screwed up calculations is to enter the atmosphere and land at the South Pole of these places. To enter, basically, and functionally do their research at the South Pole of anything that they land on, whether it's the moon, Mars, whatever. They come in from the south end because of gravity calculations. So my thought makes me wonder if our facility at the South Pole isn't there geographically for that tactical purpose. Maybe they already know, they being off-planet stuff or even in-planet stuff, maybe everyone else is also aware. Maybe we're the last ones to find out that the best way to move in and out of an atmosphere is on the south end of the sphere. So maybe we're there observationally, and maybe it's like a damn control tower. It could be a Stargate. It could be observational. Maybe it's there observational, and we're just passively listening. Oh, there's a ship coming in the atmosphere. Hey, transmit and let them know they're either not welcome or what's their welcome code. This is huge that this transmits. I mean, it's increasing the possibility of what this thing can be doing exponentially, and in many directions that people in these programs probably don't want being discussed. If you look at the expense of this device, I mean, with the materials and stuff compared to even other buildings, right, at the same location. If you look at the cost of the elevated station, I think it was something like, I don't know, like $300 billion, soup to nuts, you know, when you're talking about getting things from all over the planet to there. But then you look at the neutrino detector and it's like $500 billion. And, you know, it's just like, it doesn't really make that much sense. You know, at the time when I was there, I didn't have all of that information, but I could certainly be looking around and as a tradesman going, you know, this is weird. This is off. You know, I'll just do what they tell me I'm doing and I'll just listen to what they say it does. And I'll make sure that the lights are on. I'll make sure that the heat is on and that the doors are working. But all the while, it's like, really? You know, this is intense. What is this place? I started a little over a year ago trying to spread my truth. And it wasn't really a good year for people to be coming out and trying to spread the truth in. So I've had a lot of resistance, but now I have my website, deciphering.tv, and I have more information like this coming out. This is the start of it. I need to have an audience actually to say something. Otherwise, they'll squish me. If I start talking too fast and I don't have people listening, I'm going to disappear so fast. But I'm going to continue to divulge the things that I've learned in my travels. I have the website now. These are legitimate archives and documents. I have pictures, I have videos, I have actual first-hand experience, and the world is not the way that we have been presented, folks.